Hello students. In today's lecture we will discuss chapter 18 Neural Control and Coordination NCERT Exemplar. So this is disclaimer. So this will be our learning objective. We will explore and understand the fundamental concepts of this chapter by working through the NCERT Exemplar. Now this is index. So we will cover some MCQ based question, then we will cover some very short answer type questions, we'll cover short answer type questions and long answer type questions. So we will try to solve total 19 questions in this session. Let's see the first question, and the question is chemicals which are released at the synaptic junction are called as. So we have given 4 options. Let's see the correct answer. So we know the answer is option number B, which is neurotransmitters. So what are neurotransmitters? These are special chemical messengers that help nerve cells communicate with each other by passing signals across tiny gaps called as synapses, which are the junctions between the nerve cells. So when an electrical impulse reaches the end of a nerve cell, it triggers the release of neurotransmitters into the synapse, where they bind to the receptors on the next nerve cell, allowing the signal to continue. Now, this whole process is essential for all nervous system functions like thinking, feeling, and movement. Now, neurotransmitters are stored in synaptic vesicles located on the axon terminals of a neuron, which are ready to be released when an electrical impulse, or we can say action potential, reaches that area. Now, this storage ensures that neurotransmitters are available at the right place and time to transmit signals across synapses to the next neuron, or we can say target cells. So, hormones, talking about hormones, these are special chemicals made by the body in very small amounts, and they help cells communicate with each other by carrying messages from one part of the body to the another, just like messengers. So they are not any kind of nutrients, meaning they don't provide any kind of energy or building blocks for the body, but they control important functions like growth, metabolism, and mood. Cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF, is a clear fluid that surrounds and protects the brain and spinal cord, and it is mainly found in the subarachnoid space, which is the area between the arachnoid matter and pia matter, and the which are the two inner layers of the meninges. So this space allows the CSF to flow and provide cushioning, nourishment, and waste removal for CNS, or central nervous system. It provides shock resistance to the brain. So lymph is colorless fluid containing specialized lymphocytes which are responsible for immune responses. That means they contain the WBCs, or we can say white blood cells, which help the body fight infections and protect it from any kind of harmful elements, or we can say germs. Now it is important carrier for nutrients, hormones. So one of the carrier is blood. It is an important carrier for nutrients as well as hormones and other substances in the body. It transports these essential materials from digestive system to cells through the body, ensuring that cells receive the nutrients they need for energy and growth. So, in a similar vein, hormones produced by the endocrine glands are carried out by the blood to target organs, allowing them to regulate various bodily functions, which includes growth, metabolism, and response to stress. Fats. Fats are absorbed through lectures, which are small lymph vessels located in the microvilli of the small intestine. Now, after being broken down into fatty acids and glycerol by the enzymes, these fat particles are too large to enter the bloodstream directly. Instead, they are absorbed by the lectures, which transport them via the lymphatic system to the bloodstream, where they can be used by the body for energy or stored. Now, this whole process ensures efficient fat absorption and distribution in the body. Now, this is question number 2, and the question is potential difference across resting membrane is negatively charged, and this is due to differential distribution of the following ions. So, we have given 4 options. Let's see the correct one. So, here option number A is correct. Let's discuss the reason. So, the ion-gated channels on the neurolima control the movement of sodium and potassium ions on both inner and outside of the nerve cell. So talking about calcium ion, carbonate ion, magnesium ion, and calcium in 4 plus 4 oxidation state, these ions are not involved in nerve excitation, which is mainly carried out by, we have already discussed that these are mainly carried out by sodium and potassium ions. So these ions plays another role in biology, like bone formation, muscle contraction, enzyme activation, and maintaining pH balance. But sodium and potassium are mainly responsible for nerve excitation. Now, calcium ions are essential for muscle contraction as they help in the process of muscle metabolism by triggering the sliding mechanism of muscle fibers, while magnesium ions act as a cofactors in various biochemical reactions, assisting enzymes to function properly, thus supporting overall metabolic processes in the body. Talking about ions, it helps maintain the cell's resting membrane potential by allowing chloride ions to move in and out of the cell, which is very important for keeping the cell's electrical balance. Now, they play a key role in moving salt across epithelial tissues, which is very important for processes like water absorption and secretion. Additionally, these channels help make the inside of the cells more acidic and outside more alkaline, which is very important for various cellular functions and maintaining proper pH in different body fluids. Now, this is question number 3, and the question is resting membrane potential is maintained by. So, we have given 4 options. Let's see the correct one. So, here option number C is correct, which is ion pumps. Let's discuss the answer. So the sodium potassium pump, we know that it is a protein in the cell membrane that uses energy. It is a protein pump that uses energy from the ATP to move 3 sodium ions out of the cell and 2 potassium ions into the cell, maintaining the ion gradients necessary for the resting membrane potential in the neuron and the other cells. Now, this active transport ensures that inside of the cells remain negatively charged to the outside, which is very important for nerve impulse transmission. So, ion gradients across resting membrane potential are maintained by active transport of ions by the sodium potassium pump, which is a protein pump. So, how it takes place? So this pump, which is sodium potassium pump, moves 3 sodium ions out of the cell and 2 potassium ions into the cell using energy from ATP, which helps maintain the cell's resting membrane potential, and it is very important for nerve and muscle function. Now, this is question number 4, and the question is the function of our visceral organs is controlled by. So, we have given 4 options. Let's see the correct answer. Here, option number B is correct, which is sympathetic and parasympathetic neural system. So, here you can also see that human neural system is divided into CNS, central nervous system, and peripheral nervous system, which is PNS. CNS is further divided into brain and spinal cord, and in PNS we have somatic neural system and autonomic neural system. In autonomic neural system, we further have sympathetic neural system, parasympathetic neural system. So, the overall function of our visceral organs like heart is controlled by parasympathetic and sympathetic neural system. So these systems, these are the 2 parts of the autonomous nervous system that we have just discussed, that controls body's internal organs like heart, stomach, and lungs. So the sympathetic nervous system prepares the body for action, like when you are stressed or scared, by increasing heart rate and energy levels. Whereas the parasympathetic system helps the body relax and recover, like after eating or when you are resting. It slows down heart rate and aid in digestion. So together, they keep the body's internal functions balanced and working properly. Now, the somatic nervous system is a part of PNS, and it is responsible for controlling voluntary movements of the body, like moving your arms or legs, and it doesn't regulate the internal organs such as heart or stomach, which is controlled by the ANS, or we can say autonomic nervous system. Similarly, CNS is not concerned with it. Now, this is question number 6, and the question is an area in the brain which is associated with strong emotion is. So, we have given 4 options. Let's see the correct answer. We have option C, which is limbic system. So, you can see limbic system in this picture. Let's discuss it. What is it? So the limbic system includes the limbic lobe and hypothalamus, which plays a key role in controlling emotions and behaviors by connecting the brain's emotional centers with other parts of the brain, helping to manage feelings like happiness, fear, and anger. So emotions like excitement, pleasure, rage, fear, and motivation are complex feelings that arise from our brain's processing of experiences and thoughts. So these emotions are regulated by limbic system, especially the amygdala and hippocampus, which help us respond to situations by either feeling happy, angry, scared, or driven. For example, pleasure is linked to dopamine release, while fear activates the flight or fight response. Now, these emotions not only influence our behavior but also help us adapt to our environment, making them essential for survival and social interaction. Now, we have question number one of very short answer type, and the question is rearrange the following in the correct order of involvement in electrical nerve movement. So we have given different components of the nerve cell and we have to arrange them in a way electrical impulses move along. Let's discuss the answer. So the correct order is dendrites will lead to cell body, then axon hillock, then axon, then synaptic terminal. Now this sequence reflects how a neuron receives a signal through its dendrites and processes it in the cell body, generates an action potential at the axon hillock and transmits the impulse along the axon to the synaptic terminal where it is passed on to the next neuron on muscle cell. So you can see the picture, you can also see the sequence how it is taking place, how nerve impulse move from dendrites to axon end. So we're talking about dendrites. These are small branch-like structures that extend from the cell body of a neuron, and their main function is to receive messages or signals from other neurons. So here they act like tiny antennas capturing electrical and chemical signals from neighboring cells and transmitting them toward the cell body, which then passes the signal along the axon to other neurons or muscles. So it plays a crucial role in communication with the nervous system, enabling the brain to process and respond to information efficiently. Talking about cell body, it is also known as soma. It is the main part of the neuron that contains the nucleus and other essential cell organelles, which is very important for managing cells' activities such as protein synthesis and energy production. Now, it plays an important role in receiving signals from dendrites and passing them onto the axon, thus facilitating communication within the nervous system. So, axon, talking about axon, it is a long, thin projection of a neuron that carries electrical signals away from the cell body to other neurons or muscles. Now, it plays a crucial role in communication with the nervous system by transmitting impulses quickly over long distances. So, the axon is covered by a myelin sheath which helps speed up signal transmission and ends in branch structures called as axon terminal that releases chemical messages to other cells. Now, talking about axon terminal, it is the end part of the axon where the nerve impulse is passed on to the next neuron or muscle cell. So, it contains small sacs called as synaptic vesicles that hold a chemical called as neurotransmitter. So, when an electrical signal reaches the axon terminal, it triggers the release of these neurotransmitters into the space between the neurons, which is called as synapses, allowing the signal to be passed on. Now, talking about synaptic nerve, it is the swollen end of the axon of a neuron that forms a synapse with the dendrite of another neuron. Now, it contains synaptic vesicles filled with neurotransmitters which are released into the synaptic cleft when an electrical signal, or we can say action potential, reaches the synaptic node. Now, this release of neurotransmitters allows the transmission of nerve impulses from one neuron to another, enabling communication within the nervous system. Now, this is question number 5, and the question is during resting potential, the axonal membrane is polarized, indicating the movement of positive and negative ions, leading to polarization diagrammatically. Okay, so let's discuss the answer. Let's talk about what happens during resting potential. So during resting potential, the membrane is polarized because sodium ions are higher outside the neuron and potassium ions are higher inside the neuron. So the sodium potassium pump actively moves 3 sodium out and 2 potassium in, creating a concentration gradient. Also, potassium ion leaks out through the channels, making the inside of the cell more negative and the outside more positive, leading to polarized state. So you can see the whole scenario in this picture. So in this picture, you can see that axonal membrane is polarized. Why? Because sodium ions are higher outside the neuron and the potassium ions are higher inside the neuron. So the sodium potassium pump actively moves 3 sodium out of the neuron and 2 potassium inside the neuron, creating a concentration gradient. Also, you have to keep it in your mind that potassium ions leak out through channels, making the inside of the cell more negative and the outside more positive, leading to the polarized state. Now this is question number 6, and the question is, name the structures involved in the protection of the brain. Let's see the answer. So the following structures are involved in the protection of brain in animals. First, we have cranium. It is made up of 8 hard bones that come together to form the skull's protective shell around the brain, shielding it from any kind of injury and providing support. Talking about meninges, these are 3 protective layers that cover the brain and spinal cord, acting as a shield to protect the delicate nervous tissue from any kind of injury. Now, these layers are called as dura mater, arachnoid mater, and pia mater. They are like a 3-layer blanket that holds the brain in place, providing cushioning and helps in draining waste products from the brain. Talking about pia mater, it is the innermost layer of the meninges, which are the protective coverings around the brain. So it is very thin, delicate, and contains blood vessels, making it highly vascular. So this layer closely covers the surface of the brain, providing a direct link between the brain and bloodstream, which helps in nourishing the brain tissue. The arachnoid matter membrane, it is a thin web-like layer in the brain and spinal cord, named after the spider arachnid due to its delicate net-like structure. It is one of the 3 protective membranes covering the CNS along with the dura mater and pia mater, and helps cushion the brain and spinal cord, providing support as well as protection. Now, dura mater is the outermost layer of the meninges, which are the protective coverings around the brain and spinal cord. It is thick, tough, and made up of fibrous tissue tightly attached to the inside of the skull, providing strong support and protection to the brain. Now, cerebrospinal fluid or CSF is a clear, colorless liquid that surrounds the brain and spinal cord, acting as protective cushion and providing nutrients while removing waste. So, it is mainly produced by the choroid plexus in the ventricles of the brain and circulates through the brain and spinal cords before being reabsorbed into the bloodstream. So CSF also maintains stable pressure inside the skull and protects the CNS from any kind of physical shock. Now, the cerebrospinal fluid is found in the spaces between the meninges we have just discussed, specifically between arachnoid layer and dura mater, which are the 2 layers of meninges that protect the brain as well as spinal cord. So, it mainly acts as a cushion which protects the brain and spinal cord from any kind of shock. It functions as pad absorbing shocks. Now this is question number 7 of very short answer type, and the question is, are reaction like aggressive behavior, use of abusive words, restlessness, etc. are regulated by brain? Name the parts involved. Let's discuss the answer. So the inner part of the cerebellar hemispheres along with a group of deep structures forms the limbic lobe, which is mainly involved in emotions, memory and behavior. Now this region includes structures like hippocampus, amygdala and hypothalamus, all of which work together to process emotional responses, store memories and regulate basic bodily functions. Now the limbic system along with the hypothalamus play a key role in controlling emotions and behaviors like aggression, using or abusive words and feeling restless. Now, these brain regions are involved in processing emotions and regulating responses to stimuli, which can lead to such behaviors. So, this shows how our brain structure are connected to our emotional and behavior reactions, and helping us understand how feelings and actions are linked. Now this is question number 8, and question is, what do gray and white matter in the brain represent? Let's discuss the answer. Now gray matter, it is a key part of the CNS or central nervous system, made up of neuronal cell bodies, dendrites, unmyelinated axons, glial cells and capillaries. Now it is mainly found in brain and spinal cord and plays a crucial role in processing information, controlling movements and managing bodily functions. Unlike white matter, which contains myelinated axons for fast signal transmission. Gray matter is more involved in the actual processing of the information within the CNS. The white matter, it is a part of CNS that mainly consists of myelinated axons and glial cells, which help in protecting and supporting the nerve fibers, allowing for efficient transmission of electrical signals throughout the body. Now, this is question number 9 of very short answer type, and the question is, where is hunger center located in the human brain? Let's see the answer. So, hypothalamus is a part of the brain that helps control important body functions, and it also has some special areas called as centers that manage feelings of hunger and thirst. Now, these centers send signals to the body to make us drink or eat when we need to, based on the factors like energy levels and fluid balance, ensuring our bodies stay healthy as well as balanced. So, our hypothalamus contains many centers which control urge for eating and drinking. Now, this is question number 12 of very short answer type, and the question is, complete the statement by choosing appropriate match among the following. So, we have to match column 1 correctly with column 2. Let's discuss the answer. So this is the solution. Talking about resting potential, it refers to the electrical potential difference across the resting neural membrane, which is maintained by the uneven distribution of ions inside and outside the neuron. Now, a nerve impulse is an electrical wave-like response of a neuron to a stimulus, allowing the neuron to transmit signals quickly. Now, the synaptic cleft. Talking about synaptic cleft, it is the gap between the presynaptic and postsynaptic neurons where communication occurs. Now, fourth, we have neurotransmitters. These are chemicals that facilitate the transmission of impulses across the synaptic cleft by binding to the receptors on the postsynaptic neuron. So, A is matched with 3, which is electrical resting potential, means electric potential difference across the resting neuron membrane. Okay, now B is matched with nerve impulse is matched with 4, which is an electrical wave. B is nerve impulse, and 4 is an electrical wave is like a response of a neuron to a stimulation. Talking about synaptic cleft, it is matched with second option in the column 2, which is the gap between the presynaptic and postsynaptic neurons. So you can see the correct answer. Now, this is question number 1 of short answer type questions, and the question is, the major parts of the human neural system is depicted below. So, fill in the blanks, or we can say empty boxes with the approximate word. So, let's discuss the answer. So, human neural system, you can see in this picture also, it is made up of brain, spinal cord and nerves. So the brain is divided into 3 main parts, which is cerebrum, cerebellum and brain stem. Now the cerebrum is the largest part and it is responsible for thinking, memory and controlling voluntary actions. Now talking about cerebellum, it helps in balancing the body and coordinating movements. Now the brain stem connects the brain to the spinal cord and controls basic life functions like breathing and heart rate. The spinal cord acts as a pathway for messages between the brain and rest of the body, and it also helps in the complex actions. Now, nerves carries signals throughout the body to control and coordinate all kind of activities. So you can see the picture. In this picture, you can see that human neural system is divided into CNS and PNS. CNS is further divided into brain and spinal cord, and in brain we have 3 major parts: forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. Now talking about PNS, which is peripheral nervous system, is divided into somatic neural system and automatic nervous system. And here we also in autonomic nervous system, or we can say autonomic nervous system, we have further parasympathetic nervous system and sympathetic nervous system. So you can see the picture. Now this is question number 2 of short answer type, and the question is, what is the difference between electrical transmission and chemical transmission? Let's discuss the answer. So electrical transmission, talking about electrical transmission, it occurs at electric synapses, whereas chemical transmission, it occurs at chemical synapses. Now, in electrical synapses, synaptic cleft may not be present, whereas in chemical transmission, synaptic cleft is present. Now, in electrical transmission, uh, at electrical synapses, we can see that electrical current can flow directly from one neuron into the other across these synapses, whereas chemical transmission, in the case of chemical synapses or transmission, neurotransmitter from presynaptic neuron transfer to the postsynaptic neuron, leading to transmission of impulses. Now, in electrical transmission, impulse transmission across an electrical transmission is always faster, whereas chemical transmission is comparatively slower. So, in summary, we can see that electrical transmission happens directly between neurons through electric synapses, allowing fast signal passing without a synaptic cleft. While talking about chemical transmission, it uses neurotransmitters released into the synaptic cleft to pass signals between the neurons, making it slower. Now, this is question number 3, and the question is neural system and computers share certain common features. Comment in 5 lines. First, both process information using networks of interconnected components. That means both neural system and computers, they both process information using networks of interconnected or we can say interconnected components. Then they both use signals, or we can say electrical in computers and chemical in the neural system. Additionally, we can also say that both the systems adapt and learn from any kind of experience. Furthermore, they rely on complex structures to perform tasks efficiently. Lastly, they both have the ability to store and retrieve information, though in different forms. Let's discuss the answer. So, the sensory neurons are special nerve cells found in different parts of the body that detect changes in the environment like touch, sound, or temperature, and send signals to the brain so that we can respond to what is happening around us. In biology, just like an input device in a computer receives data, certain biological processes or structures acts as a ways for body to take in information or stimuli from the environment, which is important for responding and maintaining homeostasis. For example, sensory receptors function similarly to input devices by detecting changes in the environment and sending signals to the brain for processing. The brain functions like CPU, that is central processing unit in a computer, acting as a control center of the body by processing information, making decisions, and coordinating all bodily activities, just as CPU manages and executes instructions in the computer system. So, when sensory neurons gather information from the environment, they send this data to the brain. Now, the brain processes this information to understand what is happening and then sends command through motor neurons to the appropriate organs or muscles so the body can respond correctly to the situation. Now, this whole process is how our body reacts to things when we see, hear, touch, based on what the brain decides is the right action. So in biology also, we know that motor neurons are the part of CNS, or we can say nervous system, and acts as an output devices by transmitting signals from central nervous system, that is CNS, to the muscles, enabling movement as well as response. Now this is question number 4, and the question is, if someone receives a blow on the back of the neck, that would be effect, or what would be the effect on the person's CNS? Let's discuss the answer. Cervical spine impact. So, here it is written mid-damage vertebrae, which suggests an activity or condition that has the potential to harm the vertebrae, which are the bones that make up the spinal column. So in biology also we know that vertebrae provide support, protect the spinal cord and allow for flexibility in movement. Now damage to these bones can result in serious issues like spinal cord injury, nerve damage or reduced mobility. Now this is very important to understand in the context of human anatomy and health, especially when discussing injuries, posture or diseases affecting the spine. So, spinal cord compression occurs when there is a pressure on the spinal cord, which can be caused by various factors such as herniated disc, bone spurs, tumors, or injuries. Now, this condition can lead to symptoms like pain, numbness, or weakness in the affected areas, and if left untreated, it may result in serious complications. So, we should emphasize the importance of nervous system and protecting the spinal cord to maintain proper nerve function. So we have to protect them. We have to protect our brain, our spinal, to maintain proper nerves neural system. Now the risk of vertebral fracture refers to likelihood of a bone in the spine or vertebra breaking, often due to conditions like osteoporosis, which weakens bone. So this is somehow related to bone structure and health, and the vertebral column here provides, we know that the vertebral columns provide protection and support to the spinal cord, but when the bones become brittle, even minor injuries or everyday activities can lead to fractures, highlighting the importance of maintaining strong and healthy bones through proper nutrition and lifestyle. Let's talk about brainstem effects. So here it is written potential disruption of vital functions. It refers to the risk that harmful substances or factors may interfere with the normal functioning of essential body processes such as breathing, heart rate and brain activity, which are very important for survival. But we have to keep in your mind that this concept is very important when discussing the effects of toxins, pollutants or diseases on the body systems, as it highlights how even minor disturbances can have serious consequences if not addressed. So here it is written may affect breathing control, which suggests that a particular condition or factor could interfere with the body's ability to regulate breathing properly, which is vital function controlled by the brainstem. Now, breathing is managed by the respiratory center in the medulla oblongata, which sends signals to the diaphragm and intercostal muscles to initiate inhalation and exhalation. Now, if this control is affected, it can lead to irregular or impaired breathing, such as in conditions like brain injury or neurological disorders or certain medications, which can disrupt the normal signals needed for breathing. Could impact heart rate regulation, which suggests that a particular factor such as hormone, nerve signal, or physiological condition may influence how the body controls heart rate. Heart rate, we know that it is regulated by the autonomic nervous system, particularly the sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions, as well as hormones like adrenaline. For example, during exercise, the sympathetic nervous system increases heart rate to supply more oxygen to the muscles, while during rest, the parasympathetic slows it down. Therefore, any change in these two systems or related factors can significantly affect heart rate regulation, which is very important for maintaining homeostasis in the body. Let's see possible consequences. So, unconsciousness is a state where a person is not aware of their surrounding and cannot respond to external stimuli, often due to a temporary disruption in the brain function, such as from the injury, illness, or intoxication. So, this condition is explained as a result of impaired neural activity in the brain regions responsible for consciousness, like the cerebral cortex and brainstem. Now, it can range from a brief loss of awareness like fainting to a deeper coma where the person is completely unresponsive. So, understanding unconsciousness help in recognizing the importance of brain in maintaining awareness and regulating bodily functions. Paralysis. Let's talk about paralysis. It refers to the loss of muscle control and movement in the part or all of the body, which can be temporarily or permanent, and it occurs due to damage to the nervous system that controls muscle function. So this can result from injuries, diseases or disorders affecting the brain, spinal cord or nerves, such as spinal cord injuries, stroke or conditions like multiple sclerosis. So, paralysis disrupts the communication between the brain and muscles, leading to weakness, inability to move, or complete loss of movement in affected areas. So, loss of sensation here refers to the inability to feel sensations such as pain, touch, or temperature or pressure, which can occur due to damage to the sensory nerves or the parts of the brain that process these signals. So, this concept is often linked to the functioning of the nervous system, where sensory receptors detect stimuli and send signals to sensory neurons to the CNS for interpretation. Now, if this pathway is disrupted due to injury, disease, or disorders like neuropathy, the brain may not receive or interpret these signals properly, leading to loss of sensation. So, this can affect daily activities and may require medical attention to identify and treat the underlying cause. Breathing difficulties, it occurs when there is an obstruction in the or the pro, or in any kind of problem in the respiratory system, making it hard for a person to inhale or exhale properly. Now, this can happen due to various reasons like blockage in the airways, lung diseases, or even stress, and it can lead to symptoms such as shortness of breath, coughing, or wheezing. So, the respiratory system, including the nose, trachea, and lungs, work together to bring oxygen into the body and remove CO2. When the system is affected, it can cause breathing difficulties, which the body tries to compensate by increasing the breathing rate or depth. Motor function. Motor function impairment refers to a condition where a person has difficulty in controlling or using their muscles, which can affect movement, coordination, and balance. So, this can result from various causes such as brain injury, nerve damage, or genetic disorders. So, this is related to nervous system's role in sending signals to the muscles. When this communication is disrupted, it leads to impaired motor function, impacting a person's ability to perform everyday activities. So, severity depends on. Let's talk about severe conditions. Force of impact, it refers to the sudden strong force experience when an object collides with another, such as in cars, a crash, or a fall. So, this concept is often related to how the body responds to such forces, like the effect of sudden acceleration or deceleration on internal organs and the skeletal system. For example, during a collision, the force of impact can cause injuries like fractures or internal bleeding, highlighting the importance of safety measures like seatbelts and airbags to distribute and reduce this force, protecting the body from any kind of harm. So the exact location here refers to the specific position or site within a organism where a particular structure, organ, or biological process occurs, which is fundamental concept of biology that helps in understanding the function and interaction of different parts of the body or an organism. Angle of blow here refers to the direction and force with which a force is applied to a body, which can affect the movement or damage caused. So, this concept is relevant when studying how external forces such as impacts or blows influence the structure and function of the body parts, especially in the context like sports injuries or trauma. For instance, the angle at which a force is applied can determine the type of injury sustained, such as fracture or sprain, and how the body responds to that force. So, understanding this helps in analyzing injury mechanisms and promoting protective measures. Now, this is question number 1 of long answer type, and the question is explain the process of transport and release of neurotransmitter with the help of label diagram showing a complete neuron, axon terminal, and synapses. So, let's discuss the answer in brief. So we have already discussed that a neuron, which is a nerve cell, it has mainly three parts: the cell body or soma, the dendrites, and axon. So the cell body contains the nucleus and other organelles which are necessary for the cell's function. So dendrites are they are branch-like structures that receive signals from other neurons, while the axon is long cylinder projection that transmits signals away from the cell body to other neurons or muscles. So these parts work together to allow neurons to communicate and transmit information throughout the body. So you can see the picture of neuron. You can see the structure, how they are how the components are arranged. Like first we have dendrites and cell body, then we have myelinated sheets over axon, then we have axon terminal, synaptic node, So let's discuss each of them. So the cell body, also known as cytoplasmic part of the nucleus, contains this nucleus of neuron containing the nucleus and other organelles which are necessary for cells function, such as mitochondria, ribosomes, and the ER, or we can say endoplasmic reticulum. Now it plays a crucial role in providing energy, synthesizing proteins, and maintaining the overall health and structure and function of the neuron, which is very important for the transmission of nerve impulses. Now, axon, talking about axon, it is a long cylinder projection of a nerve cell or neuron that carries electrical impulse away from the cell body towards other neurons or muscles. So, it plays a crucial role in transmitting signals quickly across the nervous system. Now, the axon is often covered by the myelin sheath, I have told you already, which insulates it and speeds up signal transmission. So, at the end of the axon, there are tiny structures called as synaptic terminals that release these chemical messengers to communicate with other cells. Dendrites, talking about dendrites, these are tiny branch like structures that extend from the cell body of a neuron, and their main job is to receive messages or signals from other neurons or sensory receptors. So here they act like the input part of the neuron, collecting information and passing it towards the cell body, where the signal is then passed on to the axon for further transmission. Now this helps in communication within the nervous system, allowing the brain and the body respond to stimuli. So when a nerve impulse or stimulus travels from one neuron to another, it does so through the axon of the neuron. The axon, what is axon? We have already discussed. It is the long thin part of the neuron that carries the electrical signal away from the cell body. When the impulse reaches the end of the axon, and it triggers the release of chemical messengers called as neurotransmitters, which crosses the small gap between the neurons, or we can call it as that gap is called as synapse, and can bind to the receptors on the next neuron, allowing the signal to continue. So this process ensures that information is transmitted efficiently throughout the nervous system. So when a nerve impulse is like a we can say it is like a electrical signal that travels through a neuron when it gets excited. So it starts as a change in the electric charge across the neuron's membrane, creating a wave of electrochemical activity, and this wave moves quickly along the neuron's long fiber called as axon. It allows the signal to be passed from one part of the nervous system to another, helping the body respond to the stimuli. So you can see the picture showing the terminal, axon terminal and synapse. You can also see synaptic nodes. So when a nerve impulse reaches the end of a neuron, it triggers the release of a neurotransmitter from the synaptic vesicles into the synaptic cleft. Now this neurotransmitter then binds to the receptors on the next neuron or target cell, allowing the signal to pass from one cell to another, thus enabling communication in the nervous system. So at a chemical synapse, the two neurons involved, that is the one sending the signal, which is presynaptic, and the one receiving it, which is postsynaptic, are separated by a tiny gap filled with fluid called as synaptic cleft. Now this space allows neurotransmitters, which are chemical messengers, to travel from presynaptic neuron to postsynaptic neuron, enabling communication between nerve cells. So you have also discussed what are neurotransmitters. These are special chemicals that help messages travel between nerve cells at synapses, which are small gaps where one nerve cell communicates with the another. So when an electrical signal reaches the end of a nerve cell, it triggers the release of these neurotransmitters, which then crosses the synapses and binds to the receptors on the next nerve cell, passing on the message and allowing the nervous system to function properly. Then the axon terminals, which are the ends of the nerve cell's axon, have small bubble-like structures which are called as vesicles that contains chemicals which are known as neurotransmitters. So when a nerve impulse reaches the axon terminal, this vesicles releases the neurotransmitter into the space between the neuron, which is called as synapses, allowing the signal to pass from one neuron to the another. So what happens when action potential reaches the axonal terminal? It basically triggers the movement of synaptic vesicles toward the cell membrane, preparing them to release neurotransmitters into the synaptic cleft. Now this whole process is essential for communication between neurons, as the neurotransmitters then bind to the receptors on the next neuron, continuing the signal transmission. Now, synaptic vesicles, they fuse with the plasma membrane through a process which is called as exocytosis, which allows neurotransmitters to be released into the synaptic cleft. Now, this happens when an action potential reaches the axon terminal, triggering the release of calcium ions that causes the synaptic vesicles to merge with the neuron's membrane, releasing the contents into the gap between the neurons, enabling signal transmission. So, when a nerve impulse reaches the end of a neuron, the vesicles inside the neuron fuse with the cell membrane and releases neurotransmitters into the synaptic cleft, which is the small space between the neurons. And this allows the signal to pass from one neuron to another, enabling communication in the nervous system. So, when a nervous impulse reaches the end of the neuron, it triggers the release of neurotransmitters into the synapse, and these chemicals then travel across the small gap to the next neuron or target cell. So, once there, they bind to the specific receptor sites on the postsynaptic membrane, which are like locks that only fit certain keys. So, this binding triggers a response in the next cell, allowing the signal to pass along, which is important for communication in the nervous system. So, this binding opens ion channels, allowing the entry of ions which can generate a new action potential in the postsynaptic neuron. Now, this is question number 2. And the question is, name the parts of human forebrain indicating their respective functions. Let's discuss the answer in brief. We know that forebrain is the largest part of the brain, and most of it is made up of cerebrum, which is responsible for higher functions like thinking, learning, memory, and controlling voluntary movements. Now, the thalamus, hypothalamus, and limbic system are the key parts of the brain involved in controlling various bodily functions and behaviors. So, the hypothalamus acts as a relay station, passing messages between the brain and the rest of the body. The hypothalamus, on the other hand, regulates important functions like body temperature, hunger, sleep, and also regulates hormone release. The limbic system, which includes structures like the hippocampus and amygdala, is involved in emotions, memory, and behavior. So, together, these structures help manage both basic survival needs and complex emotional responses. Now, the cerebrum, which is the largest part of the brain, is split into two halves, which is called as cerebral hemispheres. Now, these two halves are connected by a bundle of white matter, which is called as corpus callosum, which allows them to communicate and work together, helping the brain coordinate complex functions like thinking, speaking, and movement. So, each hemisphere of the brain is divided into four distinct lobes: the frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital lobes. So, these lobes are responsible for different functions, and the frontal lobe is involved in decision making, problem solving, and planning. The parietal lobe helps with sensing, touch, and understanding spatial relationships. The temporal lobe is associated with hearing and memory, while the occipital lobe is mainly responsible for processing visual information. So, this kind of division allows the brain to carry out complex tasks efficiently. Cerebral cortex, which is the outer layer of the brain's hemisphere, it is made up of gray matter, and it is folded to create more surface area, allowing for a great number of neurons and connections, which enhances the body's ability to process information and perform complex functions. Now we will see about various structures of forebrain which are given below. So the brain's diencephalon includes the thalamus, which acts as a relay station for sensory information, the hypothalamus, which controls the endocrine system and regulates body temperature, and the pituitary gland, which is the master gland of the endocrine system. So, the telencephalon contains the cerebral cortex responsible for consciousness, thinking, and language. The limbic system, which handles memory and emotions and motivation, and the olfactory bulbs, which processes the sense of smell. So you can see different brain region which are diencephalon and telencephalon. You can see what structures they have. They have thalamus, hypothalamus, pituitary, and telencephalon. They have cerebral cortex, limbic system, olfactory lobes. We know that thalamus is responsible for organizing sensory information. Hypothalamus, it involves thermoregulation. It acts as a thermostat, natural thermostat for our body, and it has important function in the endocrine system. Then we have pituitary gland, which is called the master gland of the endocrine system. Then cerebral cortex, It is responsible for consciousness, thinking, and language. Then we have limbic system, which handles memory, emotions, and motivation. Then lastly, we have encephalon, olfactory bulb or lobes. So which it processes the sense of smell. So you can see the answer. Then we will continue the explanation. So then we have thalamus. Okay. Let's talk about it in detail. So, thalamus, we know that it is a small but important part of the brain that acts as a relay station, sending sensory information from the body to the cerebral cortex where thinking and decision making happen. So, it also helps control whether we are awake or asleep by managing signals which are related to sleep and alertness. So, it has many functions, including processing and relaying sensory information selectively to various parts of the cerebral cortex, translating signals to the cerebral cortex, and also regulating states of sleep and wakefulness. Then let's talk about hypothalamus. Thalamus. It plays a it talking about this, it plays a major role in regulating arousal levels of consciousness and levels of activity. So we know that it is a part of brain that helps control how awake or alert you feel, and it also manages how active or tested your body is. So it acts like a control center, passing messages between your brain and the rest of your body, and it plays a crucial role in keeping your consciousness and responsive to your surroundings. So let's talk about hypothalamus. We have already discussed that it acts as a control center for endocrine system, helps to regulate many bodily functions by producing hormones that control the pituitary gland, which is often called as the master gland because it controls other endocrine glands in the body. So the function of hypothalamus is mainly related to the overall regulation of the endocrine system and closely related to the pituitary gland. Now let's talk about pituitary gland. It is often called as master gland. It plays a key role in endocrine system by producing and releasing hormones that regulate various body functions such as growth, metabolism, and reproduction, helping to control other glands and maintain overall body balance. So the function of pituitary is mainly related to the production of hormones as a part of endocrine system. Let's talk about cerebral cortex. So cerebral cortex is the outermost layer of the brain, and it is crucial for higher functions like memory, attention, awakeness, thinking, speaking, and being aware of yourself. So it helps you learn, remember things, focus on tasks, understand language, and making it vital for everyday activities and conscious thought. Now, it connects with the structures like the thalamus and basal ganglia to help control thoughts, movements, and senses. So, the hypothalamus acts as a relay station passing information between the cortex and other parts of the brain, while the basal ganglia are involved in regulating movement and habits. So, these connections allow the brain to process information and coordinate complex functions. In biology, efferent connections refer to the pathways through which the nervous system sends signals from the brain to the muscles or glands to carry out actions, while efferent connections are the pathways that carry sensory information from the body back to the brain, allowing us to feel and respond to our environment. Now, this exchange of information via efferent and efferent connections is essential for communication within the nervous system, enabling us to react to stimuli and perform voluntary and involuntary functions. Let's talk about motor cortex. Motor cortex, found in both hemispheres of the brain, is responsible for controlling voluntary movements, especially precise and delicate actions like writing or playing an instrument. So it sends signals through the spinal cord to the muscles, helping us perform complex and control movements. So let's talk about sensory areas. The sensory areas of the brain are special regions that receive and process information from our five senses, which are like sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell, helping us understand and respond to the world around us. So these areas are the part of the cerebral cortex and are responsible for interpreting the signals sent by our sensory organ, so we can recognize things we see, hear, touch, taste, or smell, and this process is very important for everyday's activities as well as awareness. Talking about thalamus, we have already discussed. It acts as a release station for sensory information, and the areas of the brain that receive these signals are called as primary sensory areas. Now, these are the regions which are specifically responsible for processing basic senses like vision, hearing, and touch, allowing to us to perceive and respond to our environment. Now, the left hemisphere of the cerebral cortex controls the right side of the body, and the right hemisphere controls the left side, meaning each hemisphere receives information from the opposite side of the body. This is because the nerves from the right side of the body cross over to the left side of the spinal cord and then ascend to the left hemisphere of the brain, and similarly for the left side. So, this crossing ensures that the brain processes information from both sides of the body, allowing for coordinated movement and sensation. Then the frontal lobe, especially the prefrontal cortex, it is a part of the brain that is responsible for planning actions, making decisions, and controlling behavior. So it helps us think ahead, solve problems, and manage our actions in a logical way, which is very important for tasks like organizing our thoughts, focusing attention, and behaving appropriately in different situations. So this area of the brain is crucial for higher thinking. Now let's talk about limbic system. So it includes structures like the hypothalamus, which is mainly involved in controlling emotions. When we feel different emotions such as fear or happiness, the hypothalamus activates the ANS, which is autonomic nervous system, which controls automatic body functions like heart rate and digestion, helping our body respond to the emotional states. Let's move on to olfactory bulb. It is a part of the brain that helps us smell things, and it processes the sense of smell, which is called as olfaction. So it receives signals from the nose and helps us detect and identify different odors, allowing us to sense small changes in smells like the difference between flower and a fruit. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope this session was useful.